Hello, hello. We are just live on air, Hangout on air. Week 4 of the COP15 just starts. On the issues we were dealing in week 4, doing business in emerging markets. With us we have Thomas Schmalzer and Vito Bobek, who were the facilitators of week 4. Hello, Thomas. Hello, Vito.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And Danny is also with us. Danny Seiger will be the facilitator of week 5, Interorganizational Networks and Relationships. And he will introduce us to week 5 later on in this conference. So a very warm welcome to everybody who is watching us live or to everybody who will watch this video conference afterwards. Exactly. Today we are going to sum up what happened in this week 4. This was the first week in the COP15 dealing with a very with a topic and issues around business and emerging markets. And Thomas Schmalzer and Vito Bobek are here to tell us about their experiences as facilitators in this week. So to everybody who is watching us live, please feel free to ask any questions you might have on the webpage cop15.at or using your Twitter account or the Facebook group. So Thomas and Vito, what were your experiences in week 4? How did you experience the whole activity?
Yeah, I may start. I think that we had an extremely active week 4. COP15 is actually the second installment of our MOOC, and we had that also last year. Last year, our topic on doing business in emerging markets was in the 3rd week, and I have to say that although it was the 4th week, and I expected some people to maybe get a little bit tired of the MOOC already. We had really, really high levels of activity. In all of the 3 assignments, of which the last assignment was actually an optional one, we had very good postings. We had seen a lot of independent research, people bringing in additional links, allowing us also to create really a large collection of user-generated content in the MOOC. So this was really very interesting to see. Partially also exceeded a little bit my expectations, I have to say. For us, my colleague Christian and me, who were doing the facilitation, so trying to read through all of your postings, answering, etc., it was at times quite challenging to keep up with the sheer amount of content and text that you, ladies and gentlemen, have produced. We were very happy also to see some critical remarks and some critical approaches. Also, some people used the MOOC approach as it should be used, in the sense of really expanding a little bit, adding their own topics and themes to the assignments that were given. And as such, we also, for instance, had some inputs on the more critical side, like what about the social development of such rapidly expanding markets, however they are defined. Furthermore, what about the environmental challenges and problems that come with rapid economic expansion, like, for instance, in China, etc. So we were very happy to see all this, and as such, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who was actively participating in this 4th week for their contributions, for their inputs. It was really an interesting discussion also that at times developed not only between us and the participants, and us, the facilitators and participants, but also among the participants in their little groups. So in that sense, I think week 4 can be considered as quite successful. Especially around the weekend, when people seem to have more time to spend some time online. We saw a lot of postings coming in, also until even today. We had some comments and some contributions. Yeah, so that was a little bit of a wrap up from my perspective. I'm very happy.
Okay. It's very interesting to hear. I get the impression that the MOOC participants also interacted with each other during their activities. Is this true?
Yes, we also saw not only comments on the website, but also we're aware that people also in real life have talked to each other about the MOOC, not only on web-based interaction. Yeah, and there is also the Facebook group, I believe, that was active in a sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in the Facebook group, there have been some postings this week. There have been more postings this week on the Facebook group than in all other weeks, I have to say. And there has been some interaction and some very interesting discussions and questions. And there have been overall 71 participants being actively participating in week 4.
That's a lot, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like for us moderators and for you, it has been very interesting to see that there were a lot of business students participating in this week and dealing with these issues, but also students from other areas like social work, for example, managed somehow to get an introduction on emerging markets for the first time because they hadn't dealt with these issues before, and apply what they have learned and their first impressions on their areas and field of studies. So thinking about what, for example, investing in an emerging market would socially bring in the state.
Very good.
In terms of healthcare and in terms of education, and
I think it's actually great because that means that we have achieved the goal that we intended. We did not intend with this MOOC and also with our week 4 to create something that is useful only for specialists already in the topic. We wanted to make the topic as accessible as possible so that anybody from any prior discipline can join it and to get an idea about what it means to define an emerging market, but also what it means for companies to do business in these markets, or what it means for the classically developed Western economies, so to speak, when they start to face competition from large multinationals from emerging markets.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then I will go on with our agenda, and I will ask you some questions our participants asked. So I will try to read this question. I hope it's easy to understand. A participant asked, I would like to ask you about the role of rating agencies as an information source for emerging markets. How far do they influence the status of economies, and how objective and independent are they in their results? This is one part of the question, and maybe ask Vito or Thomas to answer this question.
If I may answer or try
Yes.
to answer this question. Okay. Firstly, this question is very much related to the definition of what an emerging market is. In the first place, I wouldn't enter the definition now, but I would say that basically it is very difficult to make an exact list of emerging or developed markets. Of course, the information sources like investment companies, then other financial institutions are, well, they tend to be the best guides in this respect. For example, sources like ISI, Internet Securities Incorporated, or Emerging Markets and The Economist, or market index makers such as Morgan Stanley Capital International. So without any doubt, these sources are well informed. Also, the information is built on reliable sources, but the nature of investment information sources leads to two potential problems. The first one is an element of historicity. Markets, for example, may be maintained in an index for continuity, even if the countries have since developed past the emerging market phase. For example, we can find South Korea and Taiwan on several lists of emerging economies, despite the fact that, according to the official definition, they belong to developed countries. So the first problem is the element of historicity, whether the list of emerging markets contain all emerging markets or something else. The second problem is the simplification inherent in making an index. Small countries or countries with limited market liquidity are often not considered, with their larger neighbors considered an appropriate stand-in. So this basically means if you take a look to some lists of emerging economies that, for example, you would find in Central Eastern Europe, you would find Poland on the list, you would find even Czech Republic, but you wouldn't find Croatia or Slovenia because they are too small to be interesting for investing companies. This is the first part of the problem. The second part of the problem is related to the so-called institutional voids. Of course, these international sources of information, they rely on international statistics, but also on national or home statistics from emerging economies. According to the literature, for example, Krishna and Palepu and other sources, they they argued that one of the most important differences between between emerging and developed countries are the so-called institutional voids, which are present in emerging markets and are more or less filled in developed economies. So if there are major institutional voids in emerging markets, that is also related with accuracy of information. So if I go back to the definition of what an emerging market is, which I mentioned at the beginning, I can tell you the official definition, which was made in 2004 by the World Bank. So an emerging market is an economy with low to middle per capita income, and that was 9,656 US dollars in 2004. So what was above that figure considered to be developed, and what was below that but higher than 2,500 was considered to be an emerging market. Of course, this is this statistical definition implies several problems, like what about if the GDP per capita is $100 below or above this line? So basically, I don't like so much. I would suggest that we would use these statistics as a guideline. So when we talk about emerging economies, we talk about middle per capita income countries, which are also rapidly growing and developing and changing. So according to the development theory of Walter Rostow, he describes the development process of a country as an S curve, so a curve that has a shape of S, where the initial stage is flat and with low income and hardly any economic growth. The highest part of the curve is flat again with low growth, but with high income per capita, and the middle stage, which is characteristic for emerging markets, is the most dynamic part, where the GDP per capita is growing rapidly, as well as structural changes are very vivid. I wouldn't argue, or I wouldn't discuss too much whether a certain piece or item of information is 100% accurate or not, because we are dealing with pretty soft definitions. But if we associate this question, I don't know from which viewpoint the question was asked, but if we associate this question to the operations, business operations operating in emerging markets, then of course it has a different meaning. It means that we do market research, that we do our forecasts, estimations, and so on national statistics, on national data, which is, due to institutional voids, not always accurate. Plus, of course, statistics must be interpreted. It must be you need to know what is the background of the statistics. You know, I will mention that the simplest case in general. You know the difference, for example, between the nominal GDP per capita and purchasing power parity GDP per capita, and it's very important, and you need to know the background. What is the difference of this statistical figure, especially in emerging markets, where the gap between PPP GDP per capita and the nominal is a large one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can add a little bit to that as well, because how does that relate now to the question of the rating agencies, and are they objective? Are they independent in their results, as the question goes? And what Vito pointed out really is that some of these, not definitions, but some of these estimates of whether a country belongs to one group or another are not only based on hard facts, and they are also subject to interpretation. As such, no one should trust these international organizations to 100%. Rating agencies have proven in the financial crisis that they make incorrect estimates, that they make also biased judgments about countries, about certain securities that they have evaluated. And as such, you should always, whatever source you use, and that doesn't particularly relate to the rating agencies, you should always be critical about it. And the idea of our first assignment was also to show you that there is not only one source. There are hundreds. Yeah? If you use many of those, you will get closer to the truth than by just using one of them. And that's the main message.
Mm-hmm. The person who posted this question to us has posted a second part as well, which you already have seen. And because I'm not that knowledgeable myself about these issues, I would like to set the second part of the question as well, and let you answer whether you need to give us further information. Eva, who posted this question, is mentioning, for example, taking a look on the classification system with frontier market, emerging market, and developed one. I'm asking myself if it is still appropriate to mirror the development of economies nowadays in the one-way up direction. For example, if you take Greece, so far its economic situation is known. Facing the collapse of Greek economy, is it still serious to consider it as developed? It leads me to the side question: how open are the crossovers and transitions among the categories? Are there any other knowledgeable and relevant approaches which are able to reflect the state of the economies better than those we refer currently? So I think The question is, yeah.
Yeah, if I try to answer this question, I have seen, I have the question in front of me. Well, actually, I would just comment that this is not a one-way up direction, because you need to see this classification of countries as a dynamic one. So a country might, as I have previously mentioned, two cases, South Korea and Taiwan. For example, South Korean GDP per capita in 1955, so it's only 60 years ago, it was 100 US dollars per capita. So this was the level of the poorest African countries at that time. And 60 years after, the country is ranked among the developed countries. So it has developed really dramatically. And of course, I could list also some other cases which were not so successful, and the countries have been downgraded. So it's a very dynamic process. Yes, basically, there is no precise definition. There are several definitions of what emerging markets are, and I'm coming back to what I said before. It is not the precise definition, it is the concept. It is the concept of the mid GDP per capita and dynamic changes. This is for, and I believe this concept is good. I have remembered now, when I have thought about answering this question, a very interesting remark, because Greece was mentioned, and fiscal troubles and indebtedness and so on and so forth. I have remembered to one hedge fund manager, Jonathan Binder. He has once discussed the current and the future relevance of the term emerging markets in the financial world. And he said that in the future, investors will not necessarily think of the traditional classifications of G10 or G7, so the largest developed countries versus emerging markets. Instead, people should look at the world as countries that are fiscally responsible and countries that are not. Whether that country is in Europe or in South America should make no difference, making the traditional blocks of categorization irrelevant. So what we can see from this discussion, from this thought, is that some people think that the term itself, the term emerging market, is already outdated. But from the point of view of development theory, I still believe it is a relevant one. But I would also agree with this, what Jonathan Binder said, fiscally responsible and fiscally irresponsible markets. And if we look on the average indebtedness of countries around the world, we would see that the indebtedness level of developed countries is practically twice as high as those of emerging economies. So developed economies are less fiscally responsible as emerging markets. Of course, there are two reasons. I wouldn't enter those reasons. It's a welfare state, and it's basically aging population and low growth rates versus young population, vigorous population, high growth rates in case of emerging economies. But yes, it's a very interesting point of view in this discussion, fiscal responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Vito. Thank you very much. I have a last question from the participants, and it would be the role of the African states in the future. How are they developing? What will be their role in the future?
would you, Thomas, like to answer, or shall I answer it?
The talk was about countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Ethiopia.
Mhm, mhm. Well, again, I would like to mention Walt Rostow, a Nobel Prize winner in development economics. Um, he defined the term "take off," like like flying with plane. So basically, development is somehow similar to flight of a plane. And very interesting is the point of taking off, meaning leaving the ground or starting to grow rapidly. When does it happen? Basically, you need two conditions for doing that. Of course, you need demand for your products. So you need a demand from abroad, and you need to meet some uh, internal conditions, so to say. A basic infrastructure development, um, relative security, peace and stability, so that the country is interesting for international investors and international business operators. Of course, Africa has a huge potential, like the case of South African Republic, for example, showed during the recent decade. And as you might have read, the Chinese are very active in Africa worldwide because they would like to secure their access to raw materials and energy. And from this respect, so this would be the first condition. This is the existing external demand. Africa is, of course, already on the map. It has been spotted. Secondly, of course, the second condition is providing stability, security, so to say, circumstances for development, including basic infrastructure, labor force, etc., etc. And here, the conditions, of course, vary. The main problem is stability in Africa and security.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, Vito and Thomas, thank you very much for summarizing and for answering the questions of the participants in such detail. And I'm glad we had the chance and the time to do so and to have this talk for us and for the participants to watch on their own time. Would you like to? Do you have a last comment for the participants to close up your week, so that because then we go further with week 5?
Yes, I think what's important really in the summary of things is to understand what this definition of emerging market, or what the concept of emerging markets can do. It has been made to characterize rapidly growing economies. It has not been made to characterize declining economies or anything else. So for that, you would need to come up with other concepts. For the business sector, it has also been essential to really reshape and refocus their activities towards countries in which they have larger growth potential. So this is really what the idea is all about, and it is not a concept that can catch all the aspects of economic development or social development. That's not what it can do. For that, we need other approaches, really. So that's, I think, the summary of what also has been discussed now in the Hangout here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
And good luck with week 5.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. Vito, would you like to say a closing remark?
Yes, I didn't say anything at the beginning. I can absolutely agree what Thomas said at the beginning. So it was an inspiring week, an active week, a lot of interesting discussion and then viewpoints brought in. And I would like to thank all the participants for being active. I would like to thank to the entire team that has enabled this technically, and especially facilitators who did a great job. And of course, I wish you many intellectual challenges in the upcoming week. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Thomas and Vito. This has been very interesting conversation. And now we go on. We close week 4 and we go on to week 5 with Danny Seiger. Hello, Danny.
Hello, Natasha.
Hi. Week 5 is starting today, and it will be a bit longer than the other weeks because we have some holidays. Thursday is a holiday, and Friday will be not a very active working day here in Austria. So week 5 will last from today until next Wednesday, on the 20th of April. And on the next Wednesday will be the closing hangout also for week 5. Week 5 concentrates on the topic of interorganizational networks and relationships. And I would like to ask Danny Seiger, who is the facilitator of week 5 and doing this for the second time this year, to introduce us. Danny, what are the main topics and the main activities in the week to come?
Yeah, hello Natasha, and hello everyone who is interested in participating in the week 5. As you correctly mentioned, this is the second time I'm doing it, and I learned from the first time. And one of the big learnings was that I had too much material in the week, so it is reduced. So as you correctly said, the longer time that the course lasts is not due to the workload, but it is due to the holidays in between, which must be good news for most of the learners, I suppose. The week 5 will take a closer look at the world of business, because we have now, with every week, moved a little bit closer to business. And now we'll really focus on it, and especially on an area that is seriously affected by globalization, and that is the interorganizational relationships and networks of companies. So perhaps you may think that the global communication skills are just important when you want to sell something in a business context, but that is only half of the truth. Because when you want to sell something, you also have to procure something. You have to make something. And most companies operate in many countries, globally, some of them, when they procure material or when they outsource manufacturing. So there is a vertical collaboration going on in the so-called supply chain. And that's what we will focus on in the first week. In the first chapter of this week. It is the supply chain, where there is cooperation with the suppliers on the one hand side, we call it the upstream part of the business, and with the distributors on the other hand, what we call the downstream part of the business. But, and that's important, collaboration is not only taking place on this vertical plane, but also on a horizontal plane, because companies also cooperate in their activities with other institutions that are available, like universities, for instance, where they have research contracts with, or governmental institutions when they try to influence standards or even laws, and their own customers, of course, and but even their own competitors, which is quite common these days. So the week will be structured, we'll start, I should say, with an introductory video where there is an introductory activity also, which helps to understand the concept of supply chain. And this is followed by chapter 1, which is called Cooperation in Global Supply Chains. In this Chapter 1, the learners will experience what it means to manage a supply chain and why it has become so important these days to manage the global supply chain. The short answer is because it's very important to be competitive against other companies and their supply chains. The subject will be introduced through videos. All of them are available on YouTube, and I will provide the links. And there will be an advanced activity also based on the videos in this chapter. And this chapter, Cooperation on Global Supply Chains, will be followed by a second chapter, which is called Networks and Ecosystems. And the reason why is why we jump from supply chain to ecosystems, networks and ecosystems, is simple because today the collaboration, as I said before, takes also place with other actors, not only within the supply chain of a company. And I mentioned these other actors like universities or research institutions in general, producers of complementary products that your customer needs, and when he gets them, then in good quality, and when there's a huge choice for the customer to buy a complementary product, it also supports your product in the market. And of course also with competitors with common interests and so on. This has been a rather recent subject in business research and strategy research. With the recent, I don't mean the last couple of months, of course, but I mean the last 10, 20 years. And scientists have taken or have looked for metaphors or examples in the biological world. So they try to apply the Darwinistic evolution theory also to the theory of companies. And that's why we call it ecosystems, because also in biology you can observe ecosystems and different species occupying different roles in this ecosystem. Some are more important and some are less important. So if you take them away, the ecosystem will still survive, but when you take away certain other species, the ecosystem may collapse. So we look at also at these metaphors or parallels from the biological world. I just want to name one specific case where networks influence the markets, and that's in the standard wars. Those of you who are old enough will remember the competition between the VHS format in video cassettes versus the Betamax format. So I think you must be very old to remember that, but I do. And a rather recent example would be the war in the DVD, the next format of video storage for consumers, where we had HD DVD versus the Blu-ray. And everyone knows, of course, which format won. And this was to a large extent because the companies who promoted their standard were better at establishing networks, relationships with other players. So in the complex and global world of business, alliances and networks are becoming more and more important for companies to achieve their business goals. And that's the reason why we have a look at it. And the chapter 2, like the chapter 1, includes also one advanced activity with many videos, some videos, and also some scientific text. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Danny, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this introduction to the week with the activities and the topics and the motivation of why this topic is very important to deal with. I have a last question for you. What will you do as a facilitator to support the learners in their learning activities in week 5?
Yeah, I mean, what can I do? I can read the post, of course, yeah, which you, Natasha, and your colleagues will gather together from all the different platforms and then make them available to me. I will try to answer as many as possible of them, and also in the middle of the week there will be a feedback session where I can answer on a more general level, try to distill general themes from the postings and elaborate on these themes if necessary. And at the end, of course, we'll have a session, a roundup session like that one here at the end of the of this week to comment on other issues that haven't been mentioned in the middle of the week.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for being here with us. Everybody, Danny and Thomas and Vito, thank you very much to everybody who watched us live. And yes, I wish you all the best in your week as facilitator, Danny, and all the best in your week as learners for the participants of the MOOC. I wish you a nice holiday in between, and we will see each other online, and we will also see each other next Wednesday at 6 p.m. for the next Hangout video conference of the COPE 15. So, bye and have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.